to go into opposition to build anew rather than be part of a coalition government that undermines the foundational principles and values of both the ANC and the Constitution of the Republic. As mandated by the 55th National Conference, the NEC has now adopted a guideline framework for managing coalitions at local government level. This framework is about ensuring that local governments across the country are stable, they are functional, and they prioritize the provision of basic services to our communities. The Secretary General will coordinate the engagement with other parties and civil society on this guiding framework. We must make it clear that we are working hard to regain the trust of the majority of South Africans as the ANC, so that our country does not find itself in the unfortunate position of being governed by unstable and incoherent pacts or coalitions at local level, which would grind the development, transformation, and structural reforms that we are pursuing to come to a halt. Right now, South Africa cannot afford this disaster, and our people cannot afford it as well. We have decided that in May, we will hold our election strategy workshop so that our organization prepares itself for a decisive victory in the 2024 elections. The roadmap for the selection of candidates for our parliament and the legislatures at provincial level was tabled by the Electoral Committee and was adopted by the NEC. We applaud our structures and in particular our volunteers for ensuring that we retain wards during recent by-elections, as well as those that we took from some opposition parties. We also acknowledge that in those wards where we have lost, we will need to work even harder in order to win back the confidence of our people in the upcoming elections. The National Executive Committee reflected on the recent special regional general councils that took place in March as part of the report back on conference resolutions. The RGCs enabled the National Executive Committee to assess the presence and the functionality of our structures right across the country. The RGCs also reaffirmed the need for renewal of our organization. Only strong and united structures of the African National Congress at every level of the organization can ensure a decisive electoral victory that we seek. We emerged from the RGCs that were held right across the country, encouraged that the ANC is rebuilding and renewing itself step by step across the country in order to reconnect with communities and lead the transformation process, and also ensure that service delivery does and will take place at the local level. The NEC and the NWC will dedicate most of this year to support this effort. The NWC itself has commenced with visits to provinces to monitor the implementation of the program of action and to ensure that service delivery challenges and organizational problems that may exist are addressed and resolved. In pursuit of anchoring development amongst our communities and fostering grassroots participatory democracy, the NEC has decided that more work needs to be done in supporting non-governmental organizations, non-profit organizations, and civil society groups involved in community initiatives and social justice campaigns. As these organizations and formations do a great deal of work to support our people right across the country. As the National Executive Committee, we continue to engage various progressive organizations and sectoral formations in order to ensure that we work together to achieve the ideals of our freedom and the national democratic revolution. We welcome the statement by the Secretary General of the Disabled Peoples of South Africa and commit to continue to work for a society where disabled people enjoy full social and economic rights. We do believe that it is important to have a strong and united alliance. The NEC was unanimous in its assessment that without the alliance that has existed for over 9 decades, 90 years, in other words, working together with a broad front of progressive sectoral organizations and movements, the transformation of South Africa and the national democratic struggle will be in grave danger if we do not strengthen the alliance. The NEC reaffirmed the importance of the independence of each component of an indispensable feature, as an indispensable feature of the alliance. Importantly, the NEC views this independence as a strategic basis for the continued effective mobilization of the different social forces that make up the motive forces of the National Democratic Revolution, behind a uniting platform of radical socio-economic transformation. As the National Liberation Movement, we will therefore do everything in our power to ensure that working with the South African Communist Party and the Congress of South African Trade Unions, bilaterally and through the alliance structures, the challenges facing the alliance are addressed through a process of urgent, robust, and comradely engagements that will lead to a strengthened alliance. The officials are tasked to lead this process and to report regularly to the NWC and the NEC. We also took time to discuss international matters. The NEC had a significant discussion on the current complex global situation and what our stance as a country should be as we engage with many countries across the world and also engage with many initiatives. These issues included the importance of proactively working for global peace and security, our role in the African continent, and particularly the need to advance peace and security on our continent, as well as a strategic focus on the African Union, on continental development, and on matters that have to do with industrialization, integration, particularly through the African Continental Free Trade Area. We also reflected on the need for deeper trade and more broadened trade on our continent, as well as investments. The NEC also discussed our approach towards the BRICS summit that South Africa will be hosting later this year as a critical forum of countries of the global south, along with the non-aligned movement. The NEC reaffirmed its commitment to solidarity with the peoples of Cuba, Western Sahara, and Palestine. We noted with grave concern the eruption of conflict in the Sudan and calls for an immediate ceasefire between the the Sudanese Armed Forces, and the Rapid Support Forces in the Sudan. Urgent steps must be taken by the African Union to encourage the Sudan peace process and to encourage the establishment of a transitional government that, most importantly, must work seriously to establish institutions of democratic civilian rule in that country. Our commitment to global peace and security and immediate resolution to conflict remains unwavering. In this context, South Africa calls for the United Nations to develop and adopt a peace plan that must be agreed to by the US-led NATO and the Russian Federation. Such a peace must be aimed at ending the conflict between Ukraine and Russia and find lasting solutions that embrace the security of all parties and prevents any further escalation to a wider global war. This has been a very successful NEC. The discussions were of a high caliber at a political and intellectual level. And these discussions that we held were held in a spirit of enhancing the renewal of the African National Congress. Over the 4 days, members of the National Executive Committee took time to express their thoughts, their views on a variety of issues that we discussed. And there was a very good and positive spirit. Possibly one of the best NEC meetings that we have held in a long time. And I've been around since 1991, and I know what I'm talking about. So I'd like to thank the SGO for arranging this NEC meeting, and I'd like to thank the staff of the ANC for making all these arrangements, and I'd like to thank the chairs of our subcommittees who did a fantastic preparatory work, and I'd like to thank all NEC members for spending time here and the wonderful spirit that prevailed. May it continue for the next 5 years. Thank you very much.
Closing remarks from ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa after the 4-day ANC NEC meeting in Boksburg, touching on a few issues that were discussed throughout the 4 days, including coalitions, how they've adopted a guideline for a framework to manage the coalitions. We've also seen him speak about addressing the load shedding crisis, the international matters where they're calling for a ceasefire in Sudan. So lots coming out of that 4-day NEC. Let's see if we can unpack it a little further on the SABC as we continue. For now, let's take a quick ad break. There's more on the other side.